Hello, and welcome to another episode of Steven Goes to the Movies. I'm once again here with Cynthia, and we just left the theater after seeing Welcome to Marwen. And I enjoyed this movie.
Yeah.
It was a drama.
Based on a true story.
It was fun. I've seen some articles online about Steve Carell and just feeling like he's playing Michael Scott and stuff like that. And I don't get it. I don't know where people got that kind of a comparison. You know, I think maybe they just watched the trailer and assumed a lot of things, but his character had a lot of depth to it. He took it very seriously and played the role perfectly. I know that it's based on a true story, and at the end of the movie, during the credits, they kind of showed us, they gave us a couple lines of text about the real guy and how everything, like some info about him. But, you know, it was good.
I thought it was very fun. I had not seen any of the trailers or any reviews. I didn't know anything about it, and I had a great time.
You've said to me before that you're not the biggest fan of just, like, dramas.
I hate dramas.
But this was good. It wasn't crazy heavy on the drama, but it had enough of it, like, that you felt for the world and the character and all that, and, you know, everything else like that.
I thought the way the story was told was very interesting. It really gave you an idea of what was going on
in his head.
In his head.
Yeah. We'll kind of go into the movie. It's about this man played by Steve Carell, who Augie, I forgot his last name, Ogenkamp or something like that, and he was brutally assaulted in a bar after a group of men who had ties to neo-Nazi parties.
Yeah.
A party. Had discovered or learned that he liked to wear women's high heels, and so they brutally assaulted him, and he was in a coma, lost all his memories from before the incident, and was just trying to piece his life back together. And he was a great artist and illustrator before the assault, and afterwards he can't even write his name very well. But so what he's done is he took his passion for what was World War II illustrations and turned it into photography by using, like, dolls as his models that were all based around characters from his real life. He had himself, he had his caretaker, who I forgot, I can't remember her name, the actress.
It was an awful accent.
It was an awful, terrible accent, Russian accent, played by, she was Captain Phasma in the new Star Wars movies, but I can't remember her name.
Is she the girl from Game of Thrones?
And she's Bryn of Tarn or whatever from Game of Thrones.
I knew I recognized her, and
yeah.
I couldn't place where it was.
I can't remember her name, but like, her role was fairly small. And on top of it, they made her put on this really bad Russian accent. I kind of understood why, because each of his like his women of Marwen, dames of Marwen, has a different
characteristic,
different accent. Like, there's the French woman who we learn is modeled after his favorite porn star. There's the Russian, and then we have the woman who helped him through physical therapy, who was a army vet that lost her leg in Iraq. The movie, every time, like, he has a freak out or just to kind of help push the narrative, they cut to his dolls coming to life, as it's his imagination, you know, kind of filling in the gaps in the story. It's clear a lot of what he's doing with these models is trying to remember what happened to him during the attack. And he's also just he struggles through most of the movie to get over it, which, of course, you understand. It's only been 3 years since the incident, and we do learn he's got an addiction issue, which I guess we'll say spoilers. One of the dolls is like has like a teal outfit, and I can't remember her name, but it was Deja something. I'm pretty sure that was the name of the drug.
Yeah.
Because then we see that he's taking these teal colored pills for pain. Early on, when the Russian caretaker brings him refills, she's like, "You're only taking one a day, right?" And he goes, "Yes, I'm only taking one a day." But you see him take at least 3 at one time, and every time he goes to sleep, this addiction doll is in his dreams, pestering him about, "I'm your only friend. I'm the only one you can trust.
You're worthless.
You're worthless. It's all your fault." And just all this stuff that you can really see how this could be an addiction. This could be how addiction grates at someone's mind, right? And how an addiction could make someone so dependent upon their choice of substance to get away from it. I mean, he was a heavy drinker before the incident, so it could have been he was an alcoholic, and then he couldn't drink anymore after the incident, so the pills took that place in his life. But yeah, so then we can just kind of go into the odd stuff. Early on, there's this whole thing about he can't get close to women because they get hurt, or they disappear from his life.
Yeah.
Because we're not really sure, but there was a woman named Wendy who found him after he was beaten. But were they married before that moment, or did they get married after? Maybe she thought she could take care of him through after being assaulted, but then it just got too much with his addiction issues, and then so she left. It's not really clear, but he brings in a new doll that's a Dutch dairy girl that there's no one in the real world that gets introduced as her. And
might have been a cutout scene or something.
It might have been something that we'd have to check, the DVD for some stuff they took out. But you'd think if they took out who the Dutch girl is, then they would take out the reference to her as a doll as well. But anyways,
or maybe they use that as to introduce what happens to
characters when they get too close. Maybe.
Because that's basic. She was only in for 5-10 minutes where they were acting out that scene.
That was 3 minutes.
It was so short.
Yeah, it was 3 minutes at most.
Yeah.
But yeah, so they show this character, he saves her and takes her back to his town, and then they warn her not to get too close, and then she starts running at him in a craze. She's almost
yeah, it was weird.
Yeah.
So weird.
She's like, "I must say thank you," and then she just runs right up to him, and then there's a Nazi in the bell tower who takes a shot, but before he takes it, but he was aiming for Augie, but then the pill addiction character pushes the gun, so when it fires, it hits her. It hits the girl.
Is his name Augie or Hoagie?
Hoagie. That was it. I wasn't that far off. One letter. Hoagie.
Like the sandwich. That's what I kept remembering.
There you go. Yeah. Oh, it was his last name was Hogenkamp.
Yeah, Hogenkamp.
There we go. But yeah, so Hoagie, as his friends call him, he lives a very secluded life because he feels like he can't let anyone in because either they'll get hurt or he'll get hurt. Yeah, is what it comes down to. And I mean, the movie's just good. Overall, it just progresses as he's battling through this stuff, and he makes new friends, and then he definitely misinterprets some signs about one specific character. Yeah, and it embarrasses him pretty heavily. But I was pleased that instead of going deep down into the addiction, it kind of it helps bring him out of it, because then he starts seeing things he was living too deeply into his fantasy. Yeah. Because he was able to make in a fantasy the two characters come together and fall in love. He just thought that was the real world. Yeah. So by not being the real world, he goes, well, what else in my fake world isn't real? And that really helped him come out of that. Yeah.
There was also the court case happening.
Oh yes, yeah.
Alongside the main story.
Yeah, the Nazi characters represent the men who beat him.
Yeah.
And he,
who are in the process of being
so this is
judged.
well, it's funny because it's 3 years since the incident, and they're only now finally being sentenced.
Well, you know, there's probably a lot of... Well, apparently, I don't know if you noticed in the news story, they were like, oh, they denied another...
I did hear that. So maybe they were postponing the sentencing by claiming mental instability and all these other things.
Because apparently, yeah, in the news story, they were like, oh, they've been denied another test for
psychiatric test, yeah.
Evaluation.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's basically the penultimate moment of the movie is when he overcomes his fears and is able to speak to the judge and plead for them to get the maximum sentencing.
Yeah.
Which then kind of spurs him into freedom, because now the men who hurt him can never hurt him again, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Or at least until they get out of jail in 5 to 10 years with good, behavior.
Yeah. There's also his show. His art show.
Oh yes, and the art show, which was all of his friends trying to push him into doing it because they loved what he was doing, and he was depressed and addicted and this and that, and he couldn't see it, and he's like, yes, I'll participate, I'll be part of it, and and that, I think, that really helped him become something greater.
Yeah. Overall, I really enjoyed it.
I mean, I definitely say 2 thumbs up.
It might be a little boring for kids.
Yes, there were no kids in the theater.
Yeah, just because it was kind of slow paced.
Mm-hmm.
So I think they would lose interest.
Yeah. But
it was a really good movie. It was a very interesting, very different story than what you normally see nowadays.
This is the kind of based on a true story film that I like, because this is something like where you actually learn about a person and a situation, rather than where they're like they take something that everybody already knows happened and then try to make it bigger than life. The offshore oil rig that exploded, like all those kinds of things. It's like they're trying to make someone look like a hero that was bigger than they were. And this was just like you learn about a one person and their struggle, and it helps you kind of like see that there are people out there struggling and worse than you, and life isn't so bad, and that kind of thing. They did
it in such a nice way, because like I said, I don't like dramas and I don't like stories about people because they bore me, or they're a little too much. But I thought this movie did a really good job.
Yeah, and Steve Carell, I mean, he's a great actor. Like, people got to give him props where it's due. But anyhow, thank you everybody if you stuck around and watched to this point, and thank you once again, Cynthia. And I hope you have a wonderful day and a happy New Year, since it's almost time. Almost time to watch that ball drop on 2018. And if we don't see another movie before Tuesday, then we'll see you in 2019. Bye.
Bye.